Got Chris here on the show. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ben.
Chris,
nice to see you again.
Thanks for being here today. I wonder if you can, I know you understand visualization, you've used it in your life. Can you give us an example of how what Tune's just described has worked for you?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm rather fascinated when you invited me on the show, because in thinking of stories, I've got thousands of them, and it was difficult for me to come to one specific one. And I think that probably the best one is the acquisition of the vehicle that I've got now, which is an XKR Jaguar.
It's a beautiful vehicle.
Beautiful car. And I first decided to buy that car in the late 90s, and I didn't actually get it until 2005. So there was about 6 years between the conception and the actual reality.
So you had a goal to acquire a beautiful vehicle.
That's correct.
How did you use visualization to pull it off?
Well, first thing was there were certain criteria that it had to meet. I didn't want a new vehicle because I wasn't going to suffer the depreciation. I wanted a second-hand one that had low mileage. It had to be blue. And I wasn't going to pay the retail price. I was going to buy it at a steal price. And so the first thing I did was go to the dealer and sit in one of these cars so that I could feel myself sitting in it, smell the leather. And then I got a brochure. I got one of the brochures, and I took the brochure home. And so I started to examine it, and I actually got 3 brochures. I left one on the lounge table. I left one by the side of my bed, so when I went to bed tonight, I have a quick read of it. I had one in my office, so every now and then I was picking up a brochure, constantly feeding the subconscious mind of what this vehicle was.
So you kept the goal in front of you with these awesome stimulations.
All the time, all the time. And as we started to progress into it, the following year came, I went to the dealer again, got the latest brochure. So I had 2 brochures now, last year's model, this year's model, continually feeding it. Then, as I got closer to the time, every time I went to a strange city, I'd go to the Jaguar dealer, and I'd go and sit in one of these cars. I'd see them for sale around the place. I'd always go and try them out, always take them for a ride. And every time they'd say to me, are you ready to buy? No, I'm not ready to buy yet, because I was working these conditions out of my mind. And so then I rang up a friend of mine and said, who do you know in Singapore that's a car dealer? And they gave me 2 dealers. And at that time, I was traveling to China a lot, so I could go through Singapore. So I emailed both of these distributors. One of them replied, and the other one didn't. So I continued to email the one that didn't reply. And after about 15 times, I gave up. I thought, well, this guy doesn't even exist.
Just before you tell us the punchline of this story, I want you to leave us hanging there for a moment. Now, Chris, coming back to your story, you've visualized this goal, you've been working towards it, but the folks in Singapore said, forget it. There's no such a car for you here.
Well, when I got to Singapore, I went to see the dealer that was communicating with me, and he said, you're looking for one of these, forget it. There's only 4 or 5 of them in the island. They just never come up for sale. So forget it, you won't get one. So being me, I knew I wasn't going to put up with that. But I got on the plane and came back to Christchurch, and when I got here, I booted up my computer, and there was an email from the other dealer, who hadn't communicated with me at all, with a whole mass of pictures. It's just the vehicle you're looking for. So I looked at them, and I rang the fellow, and I said, why didn't you communicate with me? I was in Singapore yesterday. I could have looked at the car. So he said, well, here it is. I've got 5 or 6 people interested in it. So what do you want to do? I said, give me 24 hours. I've got to check a couple of things out. So I rang him back 24 hours later, and I said, I've decided to buy it. He said, I'm glad you said that. He said, because it's already in a crate and a container on its way to you.
Wow.
And so it duly arrived, and I complianced the thing, got it on the road, did all those things. And I bought it at such a price that I could have dropped it for $50,000 more than I paid for it the day it arrived. And even though I've owned it for 5 years, I could still drop it for more than I paid for it.
That's awesome. And so as you share that story, I see how visualization worked as you had the magazines around you, you went and sat in the different vehicles and felt what it was like to be around them, and the image was kept alive in your mind that helped you to ride over some of these challenges. Wonder if you can share with me, what are some of the powerful motivators that you and I can use, and all of us can use, to use visualization on a day-to-day basis?
Well, in the first place, if you're going to visualize, it's no good just having a picture. You've got to make the picture live. You've got to smell the leather. You've got to feel the wind. You've got to listen to the tone of the exhaust. You've got to be in the movie. You've got to have this feeling of enthusiasm for it.
So
you have to emotionalize it.
The more powerful the image, the more power it has on our mind.
Exactly right. You have to add the emotional aspects to it. And the other thing you've got to add is the spiritual aspect, which is belief. If you don't have faith that you're going to receive it, it's not going to happen. And faith is a spiritual entity. In the motivation book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill describes faith as the eternal elixir that gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. Without that, it is not going to come real. So you have to live the dream. And as Tune said, take yourself into the future and bring it into today.
Thanks, Chris. Now, Tune, you've come on the show before and told us a little bit about your spiritual experience. We're going to change gears a little bit here and look at the spiritual side of visualization. Now, the Bible actually has a commandment about visualization. It's as if God says in the Bible, visualize any good goal you want and go for it. I've created you with a powerful mind to use, but whatever you do, don't visualize me. The second commandment says, don't create graven images, statues, or visualizations of God.